All right, well, hopefully we're not talking too much about heartbreak for this segment. 9:41, welcome back. We've heard the age-old advice when it comes to relationships. Don't go to bed angry, and that communication is key. But what are the most common reasons couples find themselves needing advice or seeking counseling in the first place? For those answers, we bring in author of Finding Your Relationship Fix and therapist Chris A. Matthews. He's joining us this morning to help us out. Good morning to you, Chris. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with, it's always interesting for me to find out the background of the relationship expert in this case. So
Yeah.
what is your background and what inspired you to get into this field in the first place?
Yeah, so my wife and I have been together 16 years, married 13 years, and we actually met in college. We got pregnant unexpectedly, and then when I went to my university's counseling center, I looked around seeking help as a young parent, and I didn't see any therapists in there to look like me. So after my wife and I figured out how to make it work, I went back to school, got a master's in marriage and family therapy, and am now practicing full-time as a counselor that specializes working with couples.
Wow. So it sounds like you draw from your relationship, your marriage, when it comes to your clients, correct?
I do. I definitely am able to relate and connect. When you look for a therapist, the thing that matters the most is that alliance, that connection or that relationship you have with the therapist is going to be the primary agent for change.
All right, so let's get into it. What are the four major reasons that you find couples are seeking you out? What takes them there in the first place?
So after thousands of hours of working with couples, I found that it's really four feelings that tend to accumulate all of the issues. So the first feeling is going to be safety and security. Next, we have feeling heard, then understood, and last but not least, feeling loved and cared for. So, for example, a lot of times couples will say finances might drive them into counseling. Well, it's not finances, it's the insecurities with finances or infidelity or cheating. That's security as well. Parenting issues, there's usually a lack of understanding. Or if you feel like your partner doesn't acknowledge you, that might be a feeling of lacking love and care. So when you look at all the different reasons, I've compartmentalized them under four feelings. And if you can allow your partner the opportunity to feel safe, heard, understood, and cared for, then that'll take care of all of the reasons that might follow underneath those feelings.
I'm curious, is there ever a time where you get a couple who comes in and you're thinking, there's not a lot I can do here as far as whether or not they will ultimately work out? What do you do in that position, and how do you even tell that in the first place?
Yeah, that's a very common question I get because therapists are not responsible for breaking couples up or putting them back together. Our job is to help the clients find some outcome. So even at the beginning of session, the outcome may be at the conclusion, we don't make it work. So the process is really what the therapist is walking the clients down, not necessarily the decision that the therapist is going to make. It's more about finding the information out that you, the client, need to make the informed decision for your relationship. And there are certain situations where one partner wants to stay, the other one doesn't. And unfortunately, at the end of the therapy session, I might refer them to individual counseling to process those needs and wants that aren't being met in that relationship.
Do you find couples who come into your office who are going there proactively, in other words, before any problems arise, that don't fall under those four categories?
That's a large portion of the clientele that I service. I tend to seek out clients that are in the premarital dating phase. I believe early the better when it comes to therapy. If you can provide a plan for your relationship, it can reduce hardship on the back end. I always use the quote or the mantra, it's better to prepare and prevent now before you have to repair and repent later.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, what do you say to couples who are looking for a couples counselor or a therapist? How do you know who's right for you? Do you go with experience? Do you go with someone who you relate to? What's the thing to look for here?
So the couple of things you want to look for. First, look at credentials. As a licensed marriage and family therapist, you know that LMFTs are trained and they have experienced thousands of hours working with couples. We have to have at least 1,000 hours in systemic practice before we can obtain the full license. Yeah. Next, do look at experience when it comes to the clientele. Just because a person might be a licensed clinician, it doesn't mean that they have experience working with couples. Last but not least, look at just a good fit in relationship in the field you have with the person.
Gotcha. And give me just a couple relationship fixes, and then we'll send folks to get your book for more.
Definitely. Make sure you greet your partner every day when you leave, come back and have a moment to connect. Also, communicate early, not early and often. So make sure that if there's an issue, bring it to your partner in the forefront. Let small problems get fixed before they become big problems.
Gotcha. All right, some good tips there that folks can do. The big takeaway here, like you said, get ahead of it. Don't wait until you've got this big mountain of problems there. Over communicate. All right, author of Finding Your Relationship Fix. There's the website and more information if you have more questions.